It's not coming in to record. There we go. Okay, just took a second to do that. And so it's called Empire Upon the Trails of the West, and it will be due next week, next Monday, or next Tuesday. I'll take it Tuesday also. And it's a little bit over an hour long. Great series. They do a good job on the West. And my plan is to show that, or have you watch that, fill out the worksheet. I'll give you credit for it. It covers a lot of the Oregon Trail, movement westward of a number of different people. The Mountain Men does a great job. And so that part I'm not going to cover in class because we do have to move on. So my expectation is you're going to know that. I'm also going to, I did assign the beginning of chapter 14. Is it 14? Or chapter 13? Whatever chapter it is on Manifest Destiny. I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry. No problem, Scott. I gotcha. And yeah, I know if you're a minute late. I am trying to take roll. I'm really trying to not get started and forget to do those things. If I accidentally marked you absent and you're here, please let me know. It's a common mistake. Let's see. So if you check on the posting, I did assign 555 to 577 after the test, and I'm going to assign the rest of that chapter, chapter 13, for next Monday. That's your Thanksgiving work. I know it's got to be a little work, but that's the way it is. But I will give you credit for it, and it'll be a very basic quiz over chapter 13 when we get back on Monday. And that too will be online, so I'll drop it on the internet, or I'll drop it on Teams. But that's your assignment. There's a link. Hopefully the quality won't be too bad. There's a copyright issue, so I had to find someone who posted it on YouTube. But The West is on Netflix. And so if you have Netflix and want to watch a little better version of it, you can watch it there. It's really well done. So I'm going to just cover a couple things really quick on Manifest Destiny, and we got to roll right into Texas and get to the Civil War. Next, about your test. I have graded the test, and some people did fantastic on it, lots of A's, lots of B's. There are a few that did not. And I wish I could give everyone an A, but that's not the way life is. But I also understand how difficult and more difficult times like this to learn and do everything online or partially online. So I'm going to give you the same opportunity I did last time. If you did poorly on the test, and hey, I know you guys want to get A's or B's, but if you got below an 80%, I'll give you the chance to do a couple short IDs over again, or redo a couple, maybe even a couple more if you did really bad. I want people to get good grades on these tests. I want you to feel good about it. Also, I think it's just the way things are thrown at you right now. Sometimes it's hard to get all the information. And if you miss a little bit while you're online, it's hard to make it back up. So I'll give you the opportunity, but I'm not going to hunt you down. You have to send me a message outside of this time. I'm not going to do it during class time. But if you send me a message, we'll set something up for you to do over the next couple of days, and it's got to be short IDs. If you got a B, but you really blew one short ID, there's a few people who did that. I'll give you the opportunity to redo that. And I should say, there are some great short IDs. And but like for free labor, wage slavery, you got to have something about this was a reaction to capitalism. And you know, these people who thought it's making wage slavery, their big fear, their big worry was that it was, once again, a little animal walked by my window. I can't help it. I got to look. The big fear about wage slavery was they thought capitalism was creating it, and they didn't want to be wage slaves. They thought they were losing their freedom, and they had to be Democrats. Free labor, they thought capitalism is great, and we're all free workers, can do what we want. And those were Whigs. And so that's one. For example, nullification had to have something about how Calhoun wanted to nullify the tariff, but also to preserve slavery. And okay, gotcha, Hayden. I didn't click submit yet, so I won't mark you absent. There. And yeah, I understand about teams not connecting. But like nullification, you had to put something about not only that this was an effort to defend slavery, but South Carolina did nullify the reduction in tariff of 1832, so they nullified it in 1833. But Jackson responded with the force bill and stopped nullification. But that left when the South wanted to bully, secession was really their only option. I did get a few people, almost forgot, who did put down free labor with slavery. I always say, who will do it? Who is going to say free labor with slavery? And somebody always does. And so, and I think, most people did very well on the factors of the Industrial Revolution. Bank, I needed something about Jackson's fear of concentrated power in the hands of a corporation. Panic of 1837, Biddle's response, Biddle cutting back funds because of the bank war, the specie circular, speculation in land and railroads. He needs something like that. But overall, I thought people did well. And if you did not do as well, did not give complete answers, did not give answers from what I talked about in class, I got a few Wikipedia answers, and Wikipedia answers will get Wikipedia level grades. And I expect a hell of a lot more than that. I'll give you the opportunity to redo it because I understand how hard this is. And I just got somebody who is in another class asking me. Well, that's great, but I won't do it right now. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know. But let's go ahead then and get started. There's still a couple people have not taken it, and it's your responsibility. I don't hunt down. All right, new heading for your notes. And this is what we're going to call, sorry. Where'd my mouse go? Mouse. Isn't this fun to watch me look at my computer screen? I need a producer. Oh, there we go. That's so weird. So you click it. Oh, okay. You click it, it goes off the screen. You got to click it again, click it again, click it again. Nothing is ever like intuitive. Whoever does this does not actually do meetings. All right, let's go get started. New heading, and the new heading is not Manifest Destiny. The new heading is, what's getting something else got my eye. Okay, a family of deer walked by. They were cute. I'm sorry. All right. So we got it here. Okay. So the heading of this one is called the Fiery 50s. The Fiery 50s, because it's the road to war. The Fiery 50s. And this will include all the sectionalism, slavery, and the events leading to war. This is a big unit. We've been leading up to it this whole time. All these events are coming to this culminating moment. And in many ways, Reconstruction, which will follow the Civil War, will be like a second American Revolution. So the first part of this is called Manifest Destiny. Westward we go. And Manifest Destiny is this idea, this concept. Sorry, trying to move up here. That the United States has a duty. The United States has a destiny to be a continental nation, to go from sea to sea, that this is our continent. And so with that, this is the expansion westward. And manifest, it is our destiny. This fits in very much with the nationalism after the revolution or the War of 1812. That there is something exceptional about people living in the United States. We're so exceptional, we name ourselves after the continent. It's ours, Americans. So here's a very famous painting of that time of going west. And I love this painting because it's Lady Columbia. And we can see her right there moving westward. And here comes all the trappings of civilization. She's laying a telegraph line. Here comes trains. But it starts with miners, then farmers. And look who's fleeing the civilization. American Indians, buffalo, all the elements of an uncivilized savagery that controlled it. And here comes the civilizing light of the United States. It is intensely nationalist. It is intensely racist in many ways. Because look who's bringing the civilization. It is white, and those in the dark are running away. And so, manifest destiny. And so what these are, first off, these The reasons why the United States was moving westward was partially this goal to spread Americanism, American civilization. It is our duty to go west. We're moving west because everybody wants to be American. And what is American civilization? It's this hodgepodge of different groups, but it's ours and it's special. Next, to expand trade. So the first ones were first people in there were fur trappers. And remember Lewis and Clark wanted to get harbors to go to China, whalers, etc., to expand trade into this area. And lastly, land. Don't forget land. Land personified everything. The American dream at that time was still to get that little piece of land and become an independent farmer. Remember the Jeffersonian idea. We talked about this, the agrarianism. Independent farmers are truly free. If I could have this little piece of land, and you'll see this time after time in history. Think about it to this day. When people get a little bit of wealth, what do? They go buy that little farm and they go live there. Think how many people come to Montana so they can act like they're ranchers if they have a lot of money. But also remember diffusion. It wasn't just land for people and this desire for land and speculation that goes with it. Remember, diffusion was spreading slavery out. And more that was becoming spreading slavery out to defend slavery and to avoid slave rebellions. And so we mentioned this once before, or I mentioned this, I gotta take a drink. By the way, my assumption is everyone can hear me. Camera's working good. Mentioned that Empire Upon the Trails has a lot about the mountain men. And so this will talk about the carriage trade and the movement westward. And the big thing about the carriage trade was the mountain men went west, the first citizens of the U.S. to really go west in large number to trade for what wealthy people wanted to ride in their carriages, what they wanted to wear, which were beaver felt hats. And there's one right there. And you'd scrape off the hard outer fur, which is really prickly, hard, protective fur, and you get this fine felt. And that became highly, highly prized. So I'm just making sure everything's working here. I got to check the screen. Like I said, I need a producer. And I'm going to skip through a lot of this. The video does a good job, so my expectation is you're going to know this beginning part. Oops. Did I just get you off here? Just a sec. You're going to see me again. Aren't you lucky? All right, weird things happen. Let me backtrack just a little bit. The Hudson River School, which was a school of art in New York City. Please get these guys down. Albert, don't worry about the painting. Albert Bierstadt is just an example of this. The Hudson River School was a school of a very American art. Like in many ways, the first American, this idealized, very patriotic art. And a lot of it focused on westward movement. And so here is this very glorified shot of the Oregon Trail. And the Oregon Trail was a way that thousands of citizens of the U.S. would get across the West as quickly as possible and get to Oregon and then California. But this also shows this very glorified version of going west. But also it's a very weird picture because if you look at it, they're going towards the sun. Well, if they're going towards the sun must be setting. That's the way it goes. So it's not, I know they're trying to show the light and show that we're, spreading civilization here. We're bringing light to the savage plains, or are we killing it because the sun is setting, because here they come and they're killing the goose that laid the golden egg. It's one of those strange dichotomy because the West will never be the same again. The Oregon Trail would go from Independence, Missouri, and across this area of the Louisiana Purchase into areas that were still being contested by the British and the Americans. Once again, you're going to have to do this on your own. So I'm going to skip ahead here. The video does a great job. Same with what they talk about Mormons. So we're going to go right to here. So on your own, you're going to watch Empire Upon the Trails, get that issue about the West. I'm sorry, this is time issues. It kind of aggravates me that I have to go faster than I want or not watch the movie with you. But hey, this is the world we inhabit. We'll get through it. But as they move westward, the big issue was, so kind of jump ahead, the big issue was slavery in the territories. And put a star, asterisk, circle, whatever you want to put by this, because slavery in the territories would be the issue. This would be the trigger of civil war. Yes, it's all underlying slavery, but it's slavery in the territories. The U.S. federal government controls territorial government. States are still states. They have their own government. Remember, the Bill of Rights didn't even apply to the states. It wasn't clear if the Supreme Court did. Remember the cases about Indian removal. That was not clear, but they control federal territory. So the fight about spreading slavery, remember diffusion, remember slave power. Well, here's the United States in 1790. And there are still some slaves up here, but most of the slaveholders were down here. But look how it changed by 1830. It is definitely moving westward now. Very few slaves in the north. Remember,
we can't see your screen anymore.
Can't see my screen. Thank you. How about now?
Yep.
Sorry about that. I must have hit a button somewhere. Remember what I said about slave, or they're called free states and slave states? They were called free states because they didn't have slave codes, but they could technically still bring their slaves. There's a gray area. But as slavery spreads this way, there's more and more states and more slaveholders that are desperate to maintain and control slavery. Sorry about that. And look by 1860. And you can see the highest percentage of slaves are in the Deep South. Anybody want to guess what states would secede from the Union first? Yeah, I think you can pretty much guess right there. But this area and whether or not there'll be slavery here would be the trigger of civil war. And that's why Manifest Destiny fits in with this concept of moving westward. Sorry, I'm a little bit hackneyed here because I'm showing you that video. But it would all come to head in Texas. Texas. Look at this map. Texas is right here. It was part of Mexico by 1821. And expansion westward means that Texas, will that become part of the Union? Will that block expansion right there? So in 1821, Mexico won their independence from Spain. And one of their most important provinces was a province called Tejas. The problem with Tejas was there weren't very many Mexican citizens there. There was a few immigrants of Spanish descent, but most of the people who lived there, and there weren't that many, and big parts of it, were American Indians, who were definitely not what Mexico wanted for their population. Mexico wanted Mexicans who would be loyal to the country. And, oh, this is Father Hidalgo right here, one of the leaders of the fight for Mexican independence. I just thought that painting by Rivera was a good one. Mexicans wanted citizens of Mexico. This is obviously very racist, but I'm just telling you, in Tejas. And they could see where Tejas was. Tejas was 1,000 miles from Mexico City. There's a huge desert between Mexico City and Tejas. So they want people there to make sure they don't control it. They had the same fear that the United States had about its West, that it would break away and form its own country. And Tejas, in a similar boat, was California, Upper and Lower California. And so what they did is the new country of Mexico invited immigrants from the United States. So that's where I put American, but it's immigrants from the United States. And all these immigrants of the United States had to do is swear a loyalty oath and become citizens of Mexico and convert to Catholicism, and they would get land. They could move in, and some of the land in eastern Mexico is perfect for certain type of plantations that seem to be growing in popularity in the American Southeast. And that's all they had to do. This is one of these decisions. If you could tell Mexico, don't do it. This is crazy. But they did it anyways. And so everyone got that. American immigrants will let all these citizens of the United States in. The problem with this is, think about citizens of the United States. More and more, they are thinking, we are Americans, this is ours. I mean, they really want land. When they went to Mexico, they did not say, okay, now I'm going to assimilate a Mexican culture. No, they went there, well, like the idea is, I'm an American citizen of the US, and I just want the land. We'll see what happens next. This is a terrible move for Mexico. But on the high plains of high upper plains, this area, rugged, dry area of Texas, was one of the most fierce tribes in the United States, the Comanches, or what's now the United States. Fierce tribe of the Americas, the Comanche. They took to the horse when the Spanish reintroduced the horse like nobody on the plains. And there weren't very many. Hey, dry plains, you're not going to have big families. And disease ravaged them, but they were some of the most fierce fighters, the greatest, maybe like cavalry at that time, anywhere in the world. And they dominated the plains. And so Mexico was desperate to get people here, enough people here willing to become Mexican citizens and take the threat of the Comanches. The Comanches, oh, here's a couple warriors with spears. Supposedly a young Comanche warrior, they're little tiny ponies, they like the small ponies, much more mobile, could hang while still holding the reins, probably their teeth, hang under their horse's neck and fire arrows accurately at 50 yards at full gallop. Just ravage the plains, and their raids would become epic. If you read anything about the history of Texas, especially Texas before the Colt 6-shooter arrived and kind of evened the score, the Comanches just ravaged the plains. But a number of citizens of the U.S. wanted that land. Stephen Austin, you'll see right here, Stephen Austin, he would organize hundreds of immigrants of the United States, basically made a deal with Mexico to take this land right here called Austin's Colony. You see other colonies right here, you know, it's fairly south. He wanted to get there first because didn't want to be up here where the Comanche would range, even though the Comanche did do raids in here. And Austin got immigrants, pledged oath, got land. And many of them brought their slaves in. So Austin came in. Yes, he died right as Texas declared independence. And yes, they brought their slaves in. Long slave caravans came in. These are people who had been, a lot of them either had bad land in Virginia or they speculated, bought slaves, and moved here to try to take advantage of the good bottom land, cheap land, but the risk of Comanche. Oh yeah, and you're going to be Mexicans and know a lot of citizens of the United States. But a number of people just followed because Mexico could not possibly police their border. And squatters are somebody who just, we talked about this before with Daniel Boone, somebody who just comes in and just says, this is my land. They have no legal claim. I mean, what's a legal claim? But legal claim is really whoever has the power and says it's their claim, but they didn't have a legal claim. Mexico did not let them come in. They did not become Mexican citizens. They did not become Catholic. And I got to be very clear about it, Catholic. But these squatters are going to get the nickname Texans. So they're not Tejanos. They're not these citizens of the U.S. who originally were going to be Tejanos. And pretty soon, all the immigrants from the United States would lump together in this term Texans. Here's a good picture of some squatters coming in. And all of them brought in their slaves. And this is going to become an issue for Mexico. Because Mexico, for various political reasons back in Mexico City, was trying to get rid of the remnants of slavery. There were still American Indians held in slavery. They were trying to create a republic, and this was going to lead to massive instabilities. Slavery and republics do not coordinate together, do not go well. And when they all came in, they all, once again, like I said, they called themselves Americans. In fact, I love this picture, okay, love is a very weird way to put this horrific drawing of slaves being forced in, chained together by their feet and their hands, yet they brought in the flag of the United States. Here is a slave fiddling to kind of have them keep step. and they brought them in to become slaves, and they came in as Americans. This is one you want to tell the Mexicans, don't do it. Well, the Mexican Republic, partially because of size, there was a revolt in the Yucatan, a bunch of stuff happened. They tried to make also a country of all, there's an attempt to make all Latin America, all of Central America, one country, the Republic or make it one republic from Guatemala way down to Panama. That failed. But all these instabilities, partially because of great inequalities of wealth, but eventually the republic fell apart, and a new dictator, Generalissimo Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, right there. Now, I like this picture. I like him, Santa Anna there. He looks a little, I like the leering look with the mustache. But he made himself essentially dictator. Intelligent man. He was a soldier, obviously not a great combat leader, but he had the army. He was, as dictators go, not as corrupt as most, but he was still a dictator, desperately trying to hold on to as much as Mexico as possible. And as he is sitting there in Mexico City with this just barely holding on in some parts, he sees what's going on in Tejas, gets information that all these people from the United States are coming in, and they're not Mexicans. They're acting like Americans, and it really does look like they're going to break Texas away. And Santa Anna is desperate to hold on. So Santa Anna bans immigrants. This is going into the 1830s, so Mexico's been there for a decade. And then here's the biggie. He abolished slavery. Now, slavery is already in the process of being abolished for the rest of Mexico, but they said no more slaves. Slavery must be free. Nobody can bring in new slaves. Well, this absolutely devastated the Texans. Many of the Texans came in there. They had all this land, and they were desperate for labor, and they brought in slaves, made huge investments. Some borrowed money to buy slaves. This horrific system that had been created, and they were furious. No more new immigrants from the U.S. means they'll be outnumbered, and get rid of slavery. These two efforts, but the biggest was abolishing slavery, would lead to a revolt. And local government basically broke down, and the Texans took power. As they saw it, we are going to be slaves to Santa Anna. We're going to be slaves to this dictator, and now we will fight. And what they would claim is, we're fighting for our independence and our freedom. This is going to become part of Texan lore. I got to be clear, our freedom to have slaves. What I just told you will not be really taught in Texan schools. And so we're coming to the War for Texas Independence, 1835 to 1836. And there's very few Mexican soldiers in Tejas. In fact, the Mexican army, Santa Anna has a small regular force, and it's a bunch of draftees, conscription. Sorry. Well, one of the first battles, I should add, the Texans have a pretty powerful militia. They have to because of Comanche tax and slave rebellion. And the Tejanos joined with the Texans. They, looking back at it, foolishly believe that we're all in the same boat. We have the dictator of Mexico City, and we're here. We're going to do what we want. At the Battle of Gonzales, it really wasn't that major of a battle, but the big thing was the Texan militia was able to overwhelm the tiny Mexican garrison and take some cannon. And this is where you get the great Texan flag, come and take it. Because when the small Mexican force tried to recapture the cavalry, they were beaten off, and that would be the first flag of Texas. And you got to admit, that's a pretty cool flag. So this is going to be all over Texas, and come and take it. But don't forget, many of them were fighting to keep slaves, but they fought together. You probably can guess what's going to happen to the Tejanos. They're going to lose everything. But, okay, who would come out as the leader of this would be Sam Houston. The video does a very good job about this, so I'm not only going to mention Sam Houston as he fought with Andrew Jackson, former governor of Tennessee, But Sam Houston had some military experience, so they gave him command of the militia because they knew Santa Anna cannot allow this. Santa Anna, if he allows Texas to break away, he knows he might lose New Mexico, he might lose California. And who knows what else? Remember what I told you, the Yucatan had just rebelled. And so we're coming to a crucial battle, the Battle of the Alamo. February 23rd through March 6th of 1836. And you've probably all heard of the Alamo. Well, Santa Anna put up an army, all draftees, and not fairly well equipped compared to the Texans, but not very well trained. Santa Anna had the problem. Most of his officers were very corrupt. They were stealing money that they were supposed to pay for food. I mean, the Mexican army had a lot of problems, even though the men would fight very bravely. And Santa Anna's strategy, his plan was, he had to march all the way across the desert. If you see my little mouse here moving around the map of Texas, remember, Mexico City is 1,000 miles south. And so they had to march across the desert. There's a lot of attrition, bad water. You know, a third of his army to a half of his army died or deserted along the way. But still, the Texans had very few men. And Santa Anna has the advantages, except that he's got to destroy this feeling of independence. So he divided up into two columns. One of his trusted Lieutenant General Francisco Urrea and Santa Anna here. And they marched into Texas with the idea of using terror. And this is an important concept of terror. This might sound familiar. Remember, the British tried to do the same thing in the Southern strategy. They will so terrify the Texans, deliver them such a defeat that they'll force them all to run away. And that's their plan. They're figuring, well, they'll just run away to Louisiana. How are we doing on time? I'm checking my clock. I have an alarm set. Hey, got to do it. Got an alarm set to happen when it goes off. So you might hear a Paul McCartney song come on. That's what will let me know that it's time to quit. By the way, if there's any questions, please let me know. I know this is very weird. Hey. Okay, where'd my screen go? Oh, just it flickered. And so they advanced in, and they knew there were a few Texan garrisons. Houston wanted everybody to pull back, kind of suck the Mexicans as far into area that the Texans have at least some kind of advantage, closer to Louisiana, closer to the United States, further from the Mexican supply line. But at San Antonio, right here, and also at Goliad, against Sam Houston's orders, hey, these are informal militia. They did what they want. The Texan army decided to make a stand. And the most famous being in San Antonio, the Alamo. And the Alamo was a Spanish mission. And Spanish missions ran throughout this area you see from Texas, all through New Mexico, up the California coast. And these missions were not just a church, they were a little self-contained city, which had various shops, blacksmith shops. They're relatively self-sufficient. A grain mill. They had the idea they'd farm outside. It had a walled city to protect them from just generic, protect them from Comanche raids. Not completely, but protect them. So it's a big mission. If you ever get to San Antonio, you can go to the Alamo, but all that's left now is just basically the church, which is right here. This big walled city. Now, they didn't have near enough men there. Just like had 130 men. They could not defend all of this. Their commander, William Travis, ignored the order to leave. He decided, I'm going to hold out there. There's this feeling that goes on to now in every army, and I mentioned this before, that one big battle will decide this. Remember at Bunker Hill, both the British and the colonists thought one big battle and we could win this war. They'll think it in the Civil War. One big battle and the war will be over. And Travis thought Texan bravery will push the Mexicans back and we'll win this war. So he stayed in this fortified, or in this Alamo. He didn't have near enough men to defend it. The walls are very high. The walls were basically built 10 to 15 feet high just to keep out a raid from Comanches who were not going to lay siege to this. But 15 feet high is a terrible thing to defend, because when you're that high, sure, men who are on parapets and firing stoops along the edge of the wall, they were set up, they could fire over the wall, fire. But when the Mexicans attacked and got to within, let's say, 20 or 30 yards, all of a sudden the Texans had to reach over and fire over the wall. So basically there's a blind spot with a wall this high around here. Also, a wall this high is going to be thin. A few shots with a cannon and it'll fall down. So this was a terrible place to defend. Terrible. You'll notice they dug parapets here to try to make it a little more defensible. And here's the shot of the Mexican attack. Because when they say, oh shoot. Santa Anna demanded surrender. Travis refused to surrender, hoping that Sam Houston would send resupplies. I know I'm going to go over this very quick, but Travis refused to surrender. And that is when, on the night of the 5th and 6th of March, Santa Anna led an attack of a couple thousand men, a diversion here, but the main attack along this long wall, not very well defended. By the way, this watercolor showing the attack here, there really wasn't much of an attack here at the church because it was more vulnerable here. And the plan was in the middle of the night to attack, and they attacked under a black flag. What does a black flag mean? No quarter. And the plan was to basically potentially execute all of the Texans as traitors, terrify the rest of the Texans, they run away. So when the attack finally happened, it was over pretty fast. They breached the wall, they climbed over it because they got to that blind spot, and the Texan lines collapsed like that. They simply did not have enough men to defend the Alamo. And they tried to retreat to a final redoubt here and hold out, but they quickly were surrounded and surrendered. And on that note, I'm going to stop. So we have a little bit left of the Alamo. Sorry to not finish. And any questions on the assignment? Any questions on the test? So go back and look at it. I try to make comments. I write a comment, it raises the score. So sometimes I didn't get a full comment in there, but I just basically put down the things that you've missed. If you have a chance to redo a couple of the short IDs, I will give you that opportunity, but you have to ask yourself. All right, we'll get through this couple weeks here. It's going to be weird, but we'll do it. If there are no questions.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.